Good morning, Mr. Osafo-Maafo. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning, Bernard, and good morning to all your listeners.
Wonderful. By the way, when did you join SSNIT, and how long have you been MD? Just to get a sense of your own trajectory in the organization.
Okay, I joined SSNIT in 2017. I believe it was on the 31st of March. So I've been at SSNIT as the Deputy Director-General of Investments until very recently when I was promoted to be the Director-General.
And so this process is not something new to you. Since you've been a Deputy DG for Investments, this is probably something that's been on your table as the DDG for that specific angle.
That is correct. It's been on my table since inception almost. That's correct.
So why did SSNIT terminate the process?
Sorry, Bernard, I missed that part of things.
No. So why did SSNIT?
The line is quite bad.
Why did SSNIT terminate the process?
I think the main reason that SSNIT terminated the process is that we listened to the objections from the stakeholders and we decided to terminate the process. If you will recollect, what we said when we had the press conference was that we would continue to engage all the stakeholders. And indeed, we've been engaging them ever since this issue became a public matter. And that engagement has been continuous since then. So, I think that we've come to the point where the unions have been very vociferous in their objections, and we've listened to that. And I think it's only good that we listen to stakeholders and look to chart a new path on how we can improve the returns of these assets that are indeed underperforming, certainly by our measure.
Do you think you left it too late? Because as of the time the announcement came from the letter we saw, the unions had already issued a statement saying they were going to strike from today. Did you and the board and the whole SSNIT, the people pushing this, upon reflection, did you leave it too late?
I don't think we've left it too late. I think that you have to put it in the context of when this process started. Historians will probably tell you that this process started as far back as 2010, when the then management looked to invite strategic investors. The current management, supported by the board at the time, and indeed the current board, started this process in earnest in 2017, and then 18 when we went through the competitive tender process to secure transaction advisors and indeed secure strategic investors. So if you started a process from 2017 or 18 in earnest, you would want to work through the process and really continue to engage the stakeholders. As I highlighted in my earlier answer, we stated when we did the press conference that we would continue to engage stakeholders. Indeed, we have been doing that. If I go through the list of meetings that we've been to since the unions externalized the issues relating to the hotels privatization, I won't call it privatization, bringing in a strategic investor to purchase 60% of the hotel. We've met with the unions. My team and I subsequently, or we being the board of the trust, met with the unions. My team and I met with the unions and the Minister for Employment and Labour Relations after that. We've subsequently had an engagement at the presidency with the unions as well. We've had 2 engagements with the NPRA, our regulator. And in between that, we've had engagements with the Ministry of Employment and Labour Relations regarding this issue. So there's been continuous engagement. So I wouldn't describe it as having left it too late. Where we are is that we are all seeking the same objective. be it unions, be it the management and board of the trust. The objective is to improve returns of our hotels. I don't think we would have any other objective than to improve the returns.
All right.
I would be surprised if we did.
So you said...
So we are working through that, and I think that we would have to look at a different option to realize that objective.
You said in this answer that the process started in 2010. Are you talking about the general process of divesting your interest in some of your assets, or the specific issue of these 6 hotels? I ask this because I'm not sure if all these 6 hotels had the level of track record, or even some of them even existed in 2010. So I just want to make that clarification for me.
Okay. The point I was making is that if you were a historian on SSNIT, what would have been said is that this process was thought of as far back as 2010 to bring in strategic investors. We, as in the current management and the board, started the process with the 6 hotels in 2017 and 18, when the board directed that we should look for strategic investors, and we started an international competitive tender process. So what I'm saying is that the process was thought of in earnest, and indeed some thought about that as far back as in 2010. As far as the current management and board are concerned, we started this process with the international competitive tender for a transaction advisor in 2018, and subsequently continuing for a strategic investor in 2022. So the process has really traveled for a long time. It's not something new. If you recollect, Bernard, this was raised at the Public Accounts Committee, and I responded to it on behalf of the trust. I believe it's also been raised in Parliament before. So it's not a new discussion. It's a very public discussion. And the Auditor General also raised it in our audit reports that these hotels were underperforming and the returns needed to be improved. So I think that it's not new. And I don't think we've left it too late, but the important point is that we've listened to stakeholders and we'll continue to engage.
All right. Now, a couple of issues have come up in relation to the letter that was sent out. So the letter that was signed by the board chair was pretty terse, two paragraphs. And it basically was signed by Madam Elizabeth Ohini. Some people are asking why she had to sign the letter. I'm sure you can clarify this. The other point has to do with the sequence, because on the same Friday, Rock City had written to say they were no longer interested in pursuing the investment, and then the labor unions had also indicated their strike. So in our newsroom, we saw those 2 letters before we saw Madam Ohini's statement. So it seems to us as though the process has already sort of imploded before your statement came in to essentially confirm it. If you can walk us through the sequence and also why she's the one signing and not you.
Okay. I think, first of all, let's clarify the decision-making process and also put it in the context of corporate governance. I think it's very important to point out that the decision to invite a strategic investor was a decision of the board. The Director-General cannot start a process of inviting strategic investors into the hotels. Neither can he execute that. So it's very important. It's a decision of the board. So decisions are brought up to the board approves, and the board directs. In this case, the board directed after management went to them with issues relating to the need for capital injection into the hotels. They made an assessment based on the lack of returns, dividends, poor performance, and decided we should look for a strategic investor. So it's the board that directs, and therefore I don't see anything wrong with the board chairman signing that statement. Indeed, I think that stakeholders should be pleased that the board chairman signed the statement, because I'm sure if I had signed it, they would have probably said that, why did the Director General sign? Why didn't the chairman sign? So I think that the important point to take away is that SSNIT has listened to the stakeholders and has pulled the plug on the process. Now, on the process of Rock City bringing out a letter and all that followed, I think, again, I would say it's neither here nor there. We are where we are. One of the points to make very clear, and I don't think it's been made clear in the dispatches, although we mentioned it explicitly in our press conference, is that after the preferred bidder was chosen, which was Rock City, we went into a negotiation process. It was the management and board of SSNIT that rejected the terms of payment. Let's make that very clear. It was the management and the board of SSNIT that rejected the terms of payment. The terms of payment obviously were the subject of negotiations, and therefore we sought to continue negotiations to reach a solution that is acceptable to all. During that process, the unions raised the same objection that they were not in favor of the terms of payment, and indeed they extended that they were not in favor at all. So that triggered a process of engagement which I outlined earlier. And I think we've arrived at a point where all parties have found it in their interests to terminate the process. We now really just have to go back to the drawing board and find a solution to the problem of non-performing assets.
So that's quite interesting to say that it was the management and board that rejected the terms of payment proposed by Rock City. So that means that it's not even necessarily our opposition as organized labor or whatever that led to this process. It's almost like the process itself was not successful within itself, if you follow, because the terms of payment they proposed, indeed, that same capital advisors letter that was put out in the public seems to agree to what you're saying about the board and management not agreeing to the terms of payment, because I think that also said that the terms of payment were not favorable. So the point I'm trying to make from, or deducing from what you're saying, is that then maybe you're terminating the process because you failed to arrive at a favorable financial conclusion, not necessarily because organized labor is angry.
I think both of them apply. I mean, I wouldn't belittle organized labor's position at all. They have a stark difference in terms of the way we should have gone about this process and whether we should have started the process at all. But the point you make there is correct, in that our own internal processes arrived at a point where we did not accept the terms, and therefore we were negotiating for better terms. But we did not agree to anything. And I think also, if you listen to the public discourse, the impression at one point that was even created was that these hotels had been sold, when indeed they hadn't. So I think that's a point of emphasis, and indeed it's a point that I believe all the various unions should take into account in their decision making. That the processes within SSNIT and at board level worked, and they do work. We go through things very thoroughly and take our responsibility very seriously. This was not any ad hoc process to arrive at a solution. No. We started the process in earnest on the basis of looking to achieve better returns, and also bearing in mind what we ourselves, in terms of our investments policy and guidelines, ask us to do, which is to improve returns of underperforming assets. And that is our core strategy, or a core part of our strategy.
Fair enough. So for such a seminal decision, which was communicated via the letter from the board chair, am I to understand it that a board meeting was held to decide to terminate the process? Because this is a major decision to take. So was there any meeting to make that decision, or was this basically, I don't know, how did you arrive at that conclusion? Because it's a major decision to announce a termination of such a high-profile process.
Well, Bernard, a meeting need not be meeting in the boardroom, but the board decided, and the board chair chairperson signed the letter. I think that a major process like this, like you say, isn't terminated lightly. But that position has been reached. And again, I think that we are overemphasizing the path to where we got to. We are here. So now how do we go forward? I think to me that's the most important thing. There is no reversal on what the board chairman has signed. And for me, the critical question is, how do we proceed? I think that is really the question.
Now, a few more thoughts, and thank you for your time. The companies that put in a bid, some people will say we didn't see any major players in the hotel investment sector on the African continent put in bids. I stand to be corrected on this though, but Hilton Hotels, Accor, and all these groups necessarily did not have their names featured prominently in there. Could it be that the how shall I say, what you were offering was not that lucrative? Because we do know that there have been increase on the continent in hotel investments in some markets, and you are putting up for sale for investment 5 or 6 big hotels in Ghana. Were you is it the problem? Is the problem a Ghana problem? Is it the economy? Is it the way you pitched it? The fact that they were making losses or whatever? Because if we check other parts of the continent, there's been, I think, a 7% increase in investments in hotel franchises across the continent. So that this shouldn't have been such a difficult thing to do. So I'm basically trying to think around why, even prior to the organized labor confusion, you didn't even get an offer that gave you the right financial terms. Do you follow me? I don't know if the question makes sense.
Okay. Let me see whether I can answer your question. I think that I couldn't give you reasons, or let's say I couldn't give you all the reasons why other parties wouldn't get involved or didn't get involved. What we did on our part is to follow a process, a fully transparent process, an international competitive tender to advertise. Now, the outcome is what we had on the table. There's no way of changing the outcome. Now, the issue around why other parties did not get involved, that I cannot answer. But again, if we are where we are with the issue with respect to the unions and stakeholders objecting to the involvement of strategic investors, then maybe they saw something that we didn't. Maybe that they were wary of all the political issues surrounding the seeking of a strategic investor to come into the hotels owned by a national pension fund. I don't know the answer to that, and this is just conjecture. So again, I think that we are where we are. Yes, in other regions, there would have been, I would say, strategic investors going in, and they would have been going in to buy maybe private assets. Private assets take a shorter time to execute. We've been through this process for 6 years, and we haven't even been able to reach a conclusion. So I think that that in itself also should give us food for thought on the investment climate within the country.
Again, not to re-argue the old issues, but when you met the media and you gave the rationale for the path chosen, you gave us the financial position of all the 6 companies. So some people wonder why we lump them together. Now that we've come to this junction, the strategy going forward, would it still involve putting 6 assets that perform differently? Because, for example, you pointed out that Labadi Beach Hotel made an 18 million average 5-year profit. Ridge Royal and La Palm made losses, net 5.5 million, and the others made smaller profits, and then Trust Lodge made a small loss. Will the strategy of putting all 5 together still be the way to go, or now that this has come to a head, maybe you want to go one by one?
Bernard, I believe, as I said, we are going to go back to the drawing board. The rationale at the time of lotting these hotels, and we lotted them with those in Accra, i.e. Labadi and La Palm being lot 1, lot 2 being the Cape Coast hotels, i.e. Elmina and Ridge Royal, and lot 3 being the hotels in the Western region, that is Usia Beach Resort and Trust Lodge in Takrady. We lotted them bearing in mind that there were synergies to be had, and also we didn't want to be left with some of the poorer hotels on our books. We've come to this point. We will go back and re-examine it. And again, as I said, this is an issue of stakeholder engagement. We've terminated the process. The stakeholders and ourselves will then sit down and we would see how we progress. I think that in the heat of things currently, it would be wrong for me to suggest openly my thoughts, because that in itself could also go and raise other issues about, hey, he's thought of doing this again and he's doing this and he's doing that. No. Let's go back to the drawing board when we have a trauma environment, and then we will engage our stakeholders and arrive at a solution. I think what is important is that the status quo is not acceptable. The poor performance is not acceptable. We need to improve the performance of the hotels.
So we agree on the problem, but we don't know what the solution is. We agree that the performance collectively of the 6 is not good enough. But whether to divest, or whether to ask government to pump more money, or whether to change management entirely, or whether to organize a prayer meeting, we don't know what solution to go forward. Fair enough. My last question has to do with the Organised Labour is beyond asking you to terminate the process. Is now asking that the board be dissolved and the management be removed, because you have not, in the words of UTAG, listened to collective public wisdom on the matter. They feel the points they made and the length of time it took them to get you to even come to this decision clearly suggests that the people who are managing SSNIT at the strategic level of the board or operational level at management do not feel the public pulse and understand the public sentiment, insofar as these are public assets which go to pensioners, contributors, and the general public. What's your comment?
Okay. I think we always need to go back to what the problem is that we are trying to solve. What is the problem? The problem is we have pension fund assets. That is people's money. And again, I wouldn't say other people's money. It's people's money, workers' money. If you have a fiduciary duty to improve performance, would you not try to do something about it? Is that the real cardinal sin in looking to improve the performance of underperforming assets? I don't think that is wrong. And again, I think UTAG, it's universities. So let's talk about how one would manage a portfolio. You cannot manage a portfolio without doing anything. Something has to be done. We just have differences in opinion in how we arrive there. And that in itself is healthy, because it means that we engage all stakeholders and we come to a solution. I don't think that it is ever possible that everyone would have the same solution in mind for a problem. Some people philosophically are even opposed to the simple fact that private investors are being brought in. You can never change their minds. Some people would say that you should just take whatever available funds SSNIT has and invest them in the SSNIT hotels ad infinitum. That is not a situation which we think is acceptable, but some people would think so. So we can never really, I think, all come to the same conclusion. But let me also make another point, and I think that it's just worth stressing, and that is on what the management and board of SSNIT have achieved since I've been there certainly in 2017, and I can speak to the track record and the changes that have been put in place. And again, when we look at that and we look at the operational improvements that have been brought in, benefits processing times at about a third of what they are, the efficiency of the SSNIT operations being much better. If you look at the legacy issues, the magnitude of the legacy issues that we inherited, that we are resolving. I mean, just to even flag a few, we look at, I mean, there is a complaint about us looking to divest a 60% stake in a hotel, in our hotels portfolio to improve performance. I mean, the contracts that SSNIT went into real estate as far back as 2015 have involved the investment of $185 million approximately. I didn't hear objections about that money being pumped into that, but we are working through that. We've disposed of approximately, or are in the process of disposing of approximately about 20% of those apartments and real estate assets, and we are continuing to do so and working through that. We didn't allow the process to stall. In fact, the cost savings alone that we made on that West Hills Ridge project was $30 million US. That's half the value of approximately half the value of what we are talking about. And I can go through other real estate investments that began in 2018, 2008, 2014, which really, again, we are straightening out and working our way through. We've completed the largest affordable housing projects in the country, bar none, approximately 2,500 units in Accra and Kumasi. We've put in a set of investment policy and guidelines that would outlive me. It's brought structure, and I would argue has put the trust in the best position that we've been since inception, because now we are guided by this policy and the guidelines to ensure that we invest in a particular way. We helped recapitalize the banks, and we just didn't even do it in an ad hoc manner. We picked specific banks that we think we thought would bring shareholder returns, and reinvested in them in 2019 during the banking crisis. So I guess the point I'm making here is that if you look across the trusts and the assets that we manage, if you look at our operations, if you look at all the other aspects that we are responsible for, a significant change has taken place. Significant.
So I think this is your response to the
at the end of that, and our attempt to improve the portfolio because of that. The university teachers think that that is the wrong procedure. I think that is not fair enough.
So your point, if I'm summarizing it, is that beyond this botched process, the performance of SSNIT over the past half a dozen years points to the contrary, that you think the management and board should be commended for making SSNIT and the pensions you manage be in a stronger position, and that the negativity around this botched transaction should not be the rope that will be used to hang the management and the board. This is what you're trying to say.
That is exactly my point. That significant and very positive change has taken place within SSNIT and within its structures.
Fair enough. And I just wanted to affirm that, because that's the premise for my next question. So, and this may sound simplistic, but because of course hotel management is not the same as pension fund management, but if the management and board of SSNIT have been able to do this fantastic work, in your words, in 6.5 years, can we approach the hotels the same way? That is a management issue. That if they're not doing well, indeed, of the 6, 2 made profits, right? So if 4 are not doing well, why don't you find good management, like the quality that runs SSNIT, but in the hotel space, give them a management contract, give them targets, and let them turn it around, just like Labadi Beach and the others that have done profits, probably have done. What would you say to that?
I think, Bernard, that is a very important point. Now, again, let's look through our portfolio, and also let's go back to what we've done at Labadi and at the other hotels. So allow me to touch on the hotels side of things. Where did we start? In 2017, we had Legacy Group, which was a private hotel manager managing the hotels. Indeed, the point that I made during our press conference was that these hotels never paid us any dividend. In fact, when Legacy were managing Labadi, they were making losses. I just want to, in 2017, when this decision was taken, okay, let's put that into context. We ended the contract that Legacy had with GBH Hotels, which is La Palme, Elmina, and Busia Resort, because they never paid us dividend, and they were taking revenue off the top line and from gross profit. That is the contract we inherited with them. So private management did not work for SSNIT. In Labadi, part of the reason for the turnaround is, in fact, we removed Legacy from the system as well. So we've tried the different ways of doing things. They have not worked for us, and we've thought of bringing in strategic investors.
But Kofi, on that point, Kofi, is it not because of the nature? Kofi, hold on. No, I'll come to that. Is it not on the nature of the contract? Because if they made a profit but they didn't pay dividend, there's a whole.
Not at all. No, they never made a profit. No, they never made a profit. That's the point.
But in the document you shared with us,
the nature of the contract. No, let me touch on it. The nature of the contract we had with these meant that they were taking a percentage of revenue and of the gross profit, gross, not net, gross. So there are two different points, gross profit. And I think that in the public domain, some people have also been quoting gross profit as net profit. It's not the same. So at gross level. So which means that they were benefiting from it when we were not. But I just want to touch on a point which is very relevant. Now, if you look in our portfolio and what is performing, the banking sector that is doing very well, and we are the largest shareholder in the banking sector, by the way. It's listed. It's private. I mean, that should tell us something. We are the largest domestic shareholder in MTN. It's private. So I don't lose sleep with our private investment. It's with our unlisted companies where we have some control, where there are issues. And the point to make is that some of this turnaround in performance has been brought about by the fact that we have set them targets and we go by them. Labadi management will tell you that we meet several times a year to go through performance. We do the same with our other unlisted companies. We have a solid monitoring process with which a solid monitoring process that we apply. So again, let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater.
I get it, Kofi. What I'm trying to point out is that the track record of the hotels that you gave us, profitability and dividends between 2019 and 2023, Labadi Beach Hotel's average 5-year profit after tax was 18 million cedis, right?
Yes.
And dividend paid over the past 5 years was, from what I see in the document, 48. Maybe I may be wrong, 48 million.
Okay.
Now, the question I'm asking is, this is net profit, right?
Yes, that is net profit.
So my question is, if Labadi is making profit based on the arrangement that you put in place, why can't you put similar arrangements in for La Palme, for Elmina, for Busia, for Ridge Royal and Trust to also use efficient operational management to make that kind of profit?
Bernard, I think that we have to look at this several ways. Look at it from a portfolio approach, and also look at it from what we are trying to achieve. If you are running a portfolio what are we looking to achieve? You have to manage the risk of the portfolio. Indeed, if you look at our asset allocation policy, one of the issues that we're looking to do, and one of the key paths that we are looking to head on, is to really also decrease over time our exposure to unlisted companies. It's part of risk management. So in a way, if we say that we are looking to divest part of certain assets, it is not necessarily a bad thing. The other way to look at it is that what were we looking to do? We were looking to also raise capital to reinvest part of it into the portfolio to create world-class assets, hotel assets that would yield us return. Now, if you are looking to raise capital, then selling part of a profitable venture is not necessarily a bad thing. And I made the point at our press conference that we are seeking to maximize what we can get from our assets whilst we decrease our exposure. And we retain a significant share. We can put a dividend policy in place, ensure that we adhere by it, and make sure that, yes, we own part of the pie, but we own a share in something that is more profitable overall. We've tried all the other measures, and they haven't worked, and we thought it was now time to bring in private investors. Indeed, in the case of Labadi, I cited two examples. I made the point in two ways with respect to how we should look at this Labadi issue. In jest, I made the comment, or it was a famous saying from one of my bosses in my previous life, when very early in my career, and he said, "Kofi, there is nothing wrong with your profit in the bank. There is nothing wrong with your profit in the bank." And then the second point I made at the time was that we are very used to having run-down state assets and then selling them for cheap. We did not go down that path. If you were selling your car, Bernard, or for that matter, your house, if it was your car, would you wait for it to be on blocks with no tires underneath before you started selling it? I suggest not. So the fact that we were running a profitable enterprise and we seek to raise some capital from it to be able to reinvest and also to get it back into our portfolio, I don't think it should be viewed as negative. But we are where we are. There are different opinions on the table, and we'll continue to engage. I think I'll take the point that there are different ways that this could have been approached, or there are different ways to go forward. We'll look at them, and I think that we can get to a solution which will improve the returns of the
Fair enough. Fair enough. So just finally, you said we'll go back to the drawing board. I suspect this drawing board would include Organised Labour.
Hello?
Sorry, can you hear me? I'm saying that my final question, you're saying we are going back to the drawing board, and I'm saying this drawing board will include all of Organised Labour because these are public assets, and this has become such a high-profile matter that this is not just the drawing board between management and board, but it's now the national drawing board, I guess.
Yes, it makes it more difficult, I have to admit. But again, it's engagement. That engagement starts at our board level, which there has always been. Bear in mind that the unions have representation on our board. So the engagement starts there. I mean, let's not make it sound as though there is no union representation on our board. There is. So the engagement starts there and has always been there at that level. With what has occurred, we externalize the engagement. And indeed, as I pointed out, once this issue became external, we have been engaging them and we are open to engaging them. So again, it's just a different way of doing things, but we welcome it. They are stakeholders. And I think that we can arrive at a solution that is acceptable.
Do you have a message for Organised Labour? They have gone on, they've declared strike, and today they have said that they should not work. I know they will have a meeting later this morning Do you have a direct message to them?
My message to them is very straightforward. That the management and the board of the trust will continue to work very hard to manage the assets that have been that we are responsible for. We would continue to manage those assets prudently and manage the risks within those assets very prudently to achieve the best of our return or the best returns longer term. It's about prudent management and making sure that we improve the performance of the whole organization over the long term. I think that they would be aware that SSNIT has indeed improved, and we are going to work to improve it further. I think that is the message that we have for Organised Labour. We are listening and we will continue to engage. I think that is the main point. We are listening and we will continue to engage.
Thank you. Kofi Osafo-Maafo is the Director-General of SSNIT.